Thank you very much. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome you to the first plenary session of this international conference. I'd like to say that I'm used to this kind of conferences going straight to the business of the day and less of protocol, because we need more time for the interaction with the speakers, and we need more time to be able to digest what the speakers have to tell us. But listening to Professor Tommy and reflecting on the topic of the conference itself, I saw a number of concepts that I'm sure we're going to be elaborating upon going forward. One thing I would like to commend Professor Shinubi and his team for is the caliber of the panelists and the speakers you assembled. I know that for this session, if you had only Mrs. Awoshika, you would have covered all the grounds. And then, so imagine that you then had like 5. To me, we need all the time in the world to really, enjoy and take in a lot they are going to tell us. The concept I saw first is the concept of adaptation. We're talking about adapting to the business landscape. So issues around resilience, issues around change management would come up when you talk about adaptation. Then the business landscape. In Nigeria, business landscape, you can write a book if even that is the only thing you are discussing. But I'm sure our speakers will take us through their understanding of the kind of landscape we have today. And then you talk about disruptive times. Disruption for us has come in different ways. The beneficial ones are the ones like Flutterwave, like MTN is doing, some other companies are doing. They're breaking the frontiers of what we have. But in Nigeria, quite a good number of the disruptions we have had the negative ones, like the ones happening in Sokoto recently, and what that portends for the unity and the peace of the country. Other concepts that I'm sure we'll talk about is around entrepreneurship. That's an area in which Mrs. Awoshika is renowned, both in terms of her own practical experience and the insight she gained over the years as a banker or chairman of boards of banks. Also the concept of institution building, of high growth, of prosperity paradox and harvesting. I hope one of our speakers will talk about a pet point that I have, and that's around the government entrepreneur paradox. I always argue that in Nigeria it will appear as if government is fighting against entrepreneurs. I guess maybe during the discussion, I'll have time to put that discussion. But I'm just a chairman, and the role of chairman is simply to moderate and ensure that each speaker stay within the time we give them, and that we have a free flow of discussion from the audience. So on that note, I'd like to welcome you to this plenary session. And for those of us who are participants on ULBS program, please take copious notes and write down your comments and questions. Because I believe that the essence of a conference is that you are able to intervene, ask your questions, make your contribution, not just listen to what the speakers have to say. So I hope we can structure it in a way that will be allowed. So on that note, let me kindly call the first speaker, who I understand has an international engagement today. She's here because of her respect and her love for ULBS. Kindly help me welcome Mrs. Ibukwa Awoshika.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I last behind this podium. So all these microphones, I apologize in advance, but I will try. I'm a very restless person. So staying in one place is like imprisonment. And I don't know why Unilag was not more ambitious, but when I walked into the room, I thought, you know what? Full disclosure, I'm an IFE alum, so we can't even begin to discuss the two schools, but let's not go there. But I'm a proud great Ifeite. Many of them inside. Good. But what I really mean is, if you are the premier university in the business center of a great country like Nigeria, you have to be a lot more ambitious when it comes to business matters. So if you are the business school of that city from this premier university, you have to be a lot more courageous and bolder about what you do. So you cannot have a conference like this, even though it's your first, which is tone-setting agenda. Sorry, I'm speaking as a business person. See, this is your proof of concept of the conference. And therefore, you do yourself a disservice for the scale, size, and the institution that you have to downplay it like you did. Because really what you want to do is to own the conversation. Because there's a major gap between the cerebral space, which the university owns, and the real sector, which the entrepreneurs and the businesses own. And it's only in a city like Lagos that is easy for you, being in that city, to bring the two together and be an effective bridge. And so I'm challenging you because I would not be fair to you if I walk away thinking or don't say it. If you envision having this conference, then have it. Which means, and you have the speakers, you put together a great league of speakers, then let more than enough people come and sit down and listen to what you say. And mobilize your own people as well to show up, because you want to influence the mindset of the business landscape, but you also want to influence your lecturers, because if you're teaching business in school, what you teach is not necessarily the same as what the real world is saying. And that conference will equip, inform, empower, and bridge the gap, and make Unilag Business School one of the topmost business schools you can have in this country, because you need to fill the gap between the thinking side of the policies and the theories and the practical side, and you're meant to be a bridge. Thank you. Don't shoot me, but I had to say the truth, just so that when you have the second one, this is your restroom for your speakers. Then you have a real conference hall for what you have. And you have the capacity to do it, so nothing missing. Now, I know that the theme is adapting to business landscapes in disruptive times. And I gave Professor Shinobi stress by never responding to his request for what topic am I talking about, or paper. Universities like paper, but I'm a real world person and I'm not a lecturer. So I don't write paper. I think what I want to think, and I say what I think based on my knowledge. I leave you to go and transcribe whatever it is that I say, and then you can have your paper. But I never write it down. So when I finish, because I want the liberty to think and to change my mind about. So I did, only last night, decide exactly on what would be my focus in terms of looking at the theme of the conference, and I've seen all the topics by the other speakers, and it's easier, even better, because I get to put something I'm passionate about, but it fills the gap. So I've chosen a topic around human cost of disruptive times, because every topic was about business, was about physical, material things. But at the heart of any business or any economy of any nation are the people. And at the end of the day, it's about how the people themselves respond to the disruption that is caused. That is what will impact all the innovation, the entrepreneurship, and all of that. And the manpower drive, how do you reset the minds of your people and the social issues that disruption can bring? Because when we talk disruption, you're talking about different things. Part of it is like what Dr. Alo talked about, government as a disruptor of business in itself. And I still had a conversation yesterday morning with my CEO for the Chess Center Group. And sometimes, as an entrepreneur of 34 years, you can understand that there are days you can't be really frustrated with being a Nigerian entrepreneur. It's really, I remember once when I was in business school in 2003, one of my business associates, I was in business school in Spain, and one of my Spanish business associates came to see me. And just around then, the government of Nigeria had just made an announcement that literally was going to change so much for our business. By then, I'd been in business for about 15 years. And overnight, there was going to be an unplanned, unnegotiated, undiscussed change to investment of your life from your mid-20s in a sector. And the guy came and said to me, please tell me, Mr. Aweshika, how can your government just wake up and make this announcement, and how come you were able to just respond and start thinking of how to reorganize your business in line with that? I had a good laugh. So I said to him, Aito, I'm a Nigerian. I go to sleep expecting surprises. So when I wake up in the morning and there's a surprise, I'm not busy. I'm not. All I know is that I must survive the situation. So I immediately kick into a thinking mode of how do I navigate this? Because there are always options 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you going to shut down and give up on the business? That's really never the option. Because you know that you didn't jump into this. Even if you did, it's become a part of your life. So you don't run out overnight. But it has consequences. The mindset of the entrepreneur, the discouragement, the emotional stability of the entrepreneur, the impact on their thinking and how. Okay, on my way here, someone called me and said, dollar is 600. Yeah. But when I had a conversation last night with my husband, he's in the oil and gas sector, so they're dollarized business. And he was saying to me, oh, dollar is about 5.97 yesterday. And then this morning, no, he first said, oh, someone said to him he's going to get to this ridiculous rate. And I said, it's not going to happen in Jesus' name. That's a Nigerian. We find our safe spaces to deal with the issues that we don't have control over, but have impact and control over our situation. And I was saying that with all honesty when I answered my husband. And I said to him, do you know the real problem of what you're talking about? That for you, a dollar business, that can be an advantage. But for people in real sector, it's a challenge. Yeah. And it's a challenge that you almost feel like you don't know what you're doing, not because you don't know what you're doing, but because factors outside of your control are taking away your wisdom, your ability to, it's not that you can't innovate, it's that the circumstance does not even permit you to innovate a solution because it is outside of your control. I'll give you an example. My team were reporting a situation to me of recent. And we have certain material, one of our factories, all the materials come, 50% of the material comes from Europe. We have a joint venture partner. So we have stuff that has to come in from Europe. And we've done a lot of replacement here in order to create a good mix to help us with cost management and everything. And all of a sudden, now, you're a legal institution working with an international multinational. Your goods are shipped to you. You were meant to be able to open your Form M. You're meant to be able to bid for the money and order your goods and let them come. However, the system right now makes that almost impossible. Why? To achieve the total sum of the particular letter of credit, you're trying to bid for 14, 16 weeks, and getting piecemeals of allocations, trying to pull towards a sum for one LC. This is a shipment that you probably need to receive every month or every 6 to 8 weeks, which means that you can't achieve one shipment in 4 to 5 months of bidding. Now, what does that tell you? For a Nigerian entrepreneur trying to survive, you're going to put yourself back in the mode of, what is my option? What is your option? It's buying alternative market. So if you're buying alternative market, then you have a cost increase of almost 50% between your official rate of 400 and something and 500, let's say 600 today. It's literally 50% of your cost in terms of foreign exchange to source legally acceptable raw materials for a manufacturing facility that employs and is adding value. Now, if that were your only problem, that would be great. But even as you do that, you source and you order, which means you're going to use a Form M that is not valid for foreign exchange because the money isn't available and therefore you have used alternate funds. Now, when your shipment then arrives, and I'm telling you a real life case, when your shipment then arrives with your Form M that is not valid for foreign exchange because you were forced to make that an option, and you have projects running that are timed, where you have charges for every week of delay. On most major projects, that's how the contract is structured. By the time the goods arrive, and between the bank and customs, you get your document of how much you're charged. Because your document is not valid for foreign exchange, you see a duty charge that doesn't make sense to you because you know the rate of duty that should apply to your goods. And then you go to customs to go and make a case that why? I mean, we've priced based on what we know, following the rules and the code. And then they come back and say, as a matter of fact, we're going to issue you an additional charge. Why? They have a target they have been given by the government as the target to make within the period. And in order to achieve that, the way they are able to do it is they assume, and this is why I'm talking about, see, when you talk about different kinds of disruptions that can happen in the market, you have to think about the people behind it. The human factor. The human factor of those, the operator, the human factor of the businesses, the human factor of the labor, and of the impact on the market. Because at the end of the day, those factors must work together for us to actually add value to our economy. But when they fall apart, some people might smile, but ultimately, we make the choice, which speaks to what you want to talk about, the government angle of it, without intending to. Because a lot of the decision makers in some of those sectors within government have no understanding of how business works. And therefore, from an uninformed position, people are empowered to make policy decisions that impact the real sector. And then decide that just because you are, your Form M is not valid for foreign exchange, that you must have under-invoiced. That is the assumption. Based on such an assumption, a deliberate economic decision is made by an agency to charge you twice because they believe that you must have under-invoiced and you are not paying the correct duty simply because your Form M is not valid for foreign exchange, and therefore they can mess around with you and charge you extra. And then you lose 6 weeks trying to prove, we've been doing this for what? This factory has been operating for 17, 18 years. You can check the records. The price of the items, you can track. At the worst, call the company where it's shipped from. It's a multinational company. They cannot forge. It's not from some countries. It's a European multinational multinational, check. You go back and forth. You then end up paying so much more. If you're supposed to pay duty on a shipment that's 4.5 million, and you end up paying 18 point something million, then you ask yourself, how do you make the numbers work? Now, it is important for us to understand the impact is at different levels. It's in the ability for the entrepreneurs to continue to create, innovate, be inspired to invest and to create value. Or sometimes to just say, you know what? I'm better off selling off my assets and just getting out of this. We can't even afford that because no country can grow without an active entrepreneurial class. You cannot grow as an economy if you do not have people creatively trying to make the problems of the nation, turn them into economic solutions. Solutions that people are willing to pay for which they can make money for the economy in a cycling system. We can't afford it. However, people go into entrepreneurship first out of interest, two, to solve problems, but ultimately to get value. And no business is sustainable when you run the business without profit to inspire. Because at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs are driven to make further investment, to experiment creatively, because every business plan you have is a bundle of assumptions. It's a theory of ideas trying to solve some problems you've identified. What you're trying to do is to prove that it's possible to solve that problem in a certain way and make people pay for it. There's always risk attached to it, and that risk is what the entrepreneur commits to carry. Because when they put their investment, their time and their intellect to work, they are saying, I'm willing to take the risk to prove this to be true. And if they prove it to be true sustainably, they get rewarded by the profit. But where the system disrupts itself, so disruption can be positive or negative. Because every time you have disruption, there are many things that are put at risk. Some things die because of change. But even those systems, products can die, entrepreneurs can respond by taking the opportunities they see within the changes to create new solutions. But they must see a reason for doing it. And reward in terms of profit is part of what drives it. Now, at the end of the day, if we create an environment that does not inspire, that does not encourage, that does not empower, and does not help to make people wake up in the morning wanting to take on the challenge and carry the risk of the situation, we create a problem across board. Why? Think about Nigeria. Think about our population dynamics. Think about the age bracket between 20 and 45. Think about the percentage of our population that is within that segment. Think about how many graduates we're bringing out of universities every year or other tertiary types of institutions. Now think about the unemployment issue. How do you solve it? Government should never be the biggest employer of labor in any country. Least of all in Nigeria. It's why you would walk into a ministry and there are more people hanging around who are employees of the ministry than people doing something. There are people with all sorts of random roles. And therefore, government isn't efficient because every time they're faced with unemployment, we try to absorb more people into the system. What we actually do is we lock those people up from being productive. Because when you employ people that you do not create an environment for them to apply themselves, you disable them, rather than create an environment where they are part of creating solutions that are economically viable for the economy. The only people who really can create jobs are entrepreneurs. Any nation that is serious about creating jobs will create an entire system to generate more entrepreneurs than any class of people. Why? Because it's in the building of the businesses, from the one that employs 1 to the one that employs 5 to the one that employs 10 to the one that employs 50. It is the one that employs 1, 3, 5, 10 that can grow to the one that employs 50, 100, and so. It's a value chain. And every time we allow negative disruption, we destroy the chain. And in destroying that chain, we actually destroy the pipeline of being able to absorb our human capital into constructive engagement. And every time that we do that, we create a social situation. And right now, we do have a lot of social situations to attend. Agitation left, right, and center. If you have a lot of unemployed, able-bodied right mind, they have to find something to engage their mind to. It's easy to tease and apply little benefit and make people do the wrong things if they are not constructively engaged. There's a human cost to negative disruption. There's a need for us to understand that disruption is change, but change can be good. So even when by innovation and new creation, certain businesses need to die off, usually the same businesses can reinvent themselves in a different way. Or the best entrepreneurs you will find in a sector are entrepreneurs who have worked in a certain industry and have seen the limitations and the challenges of that industry from within a particular company. And every problem they've ever seen that they have wanted to solve is what they in turn are likely to go and create a solution to if we have a structure and a system that facilitates their ability to solve that problem. I'll give you an example. So I had a friend who went to university together, and she studied chemical engineering. And when she finished, she came out and started working in one of the major oil companies for a long while. And then the telcos came. And when the telcos came, one of the telcos was trying to solve this problem of the supply of diesel to all their base stations that they were setting up across the country. Don't forget, we never had that as a problem, because we didn't have, all we had was the dialing phone, and that one didn't require all of these towers that they were having. So the distribution of diesel across every small area for generators to keep those masts working so that our phones can work was not a problem that existed. A policy of government, which was the right policy, created a new opportunity in the market. And therefore, the right-thinking individuals would have to think of how do we create solutions that increase the value chain of opportunity within a sector. All the government wanted to do was to facilitate better communication within the country. So they went to the company where she worked. Her team was responsible for interacting with them in many ways. And they were looking for ways to be able to distribute product to all the base stations that they were setting up around, or masts, wherever, the generators that will run them. And she said they had many, many meetings trying to find this solution. But one day she called them and said, you know what? The problem you have can never be solved by this company as it's structured. And this is the truth. Some institutions in their current situation are not able to turn around quickly enough to respond to situations. That's how new entrepreneurs emerge. Because you have to be thinking around the new A lot of new generation businesses are emerging in Nigeria right now. Because some of the situations we're dealing with, none of the older generation of entrepreneurs are related to it in a way that the younger guys are. Because it's part of how they and their friends live. It's part of how they think. It's part of their generation of issues. You like to go to the shop. They like to order everything online. And so because they like to order everything online, there's a problem of who will deliver. If you check all the companies that are emerging as the logistics companies, they're controlled by young people. Why? Because some of them worked in some of those companies where you could click and buy, and they saw that even though many people wanted to click and buy, we had problems delivering to people. There wasn't a system that existed in the country to solve the problem. And at the end of the day, some of them started pulling out of those companies to go and set up businesses to solve the problems that they have seen. This is how you create a value chain of entrepreneurship in any system. It's about people having the capacity, seeing the opportunities, but having the opportunity and a system and an environment that facilitates their ability to take that opportunity and turn it into a viable economic system that creates jobs, that puts money in the economy within the system, employs people, so they pay rent, so they buy food, so they get cleaners, so they get this. And before you know it, there's a whole dynamism across a particular sector. The intent of government or any enabler is usually, most times, singularly focused. But the impact is multidimensional. But the people who actually make it happen are the entrepreneurs. And it's about a society that creates an enabling environment and government that has an understanding to facilitate and to put policies to keep driving the improvement and the enablement of those sectors. Anyway, so this friend of mine called those guys and said, what you want cannot happen because this company has no system or structure to deliver what you want. But you know what? I can solve this problem for you. And she tried to make her company see it. It takes longer for companies to turn around. This is why disruption always puts certain organizations at risk. It's about the mindset of the people who drive it. Because don't forget, when a company has become institutionalized, the guys who run it are managers, they're operators, they're not entrepreneurs. And some of them are not even entrepreneurs. They know how to manage what you have given to them, but they don't know how to create it in a new way. So they're two different kinds of animals you're looking for. And the system will itself birth them or lose them. At the end of the day, she said to these people, I think I can solve your problem. And she went back and designed a way to be able to meet their need. Eventually, that emerged to be a super successful multi-billion naira business that she's built over time. And it started from observing and seeing that there's a problem here, there's a possible solution, but the system and the structure of this institution does not have the capacity to handle it. What does that tell us? Preparing the minds that think right, creating an environment that enables, empowering people not to be afraid to take opportunities, structuring and creating knowledge and understanding of entrepreneurship. A lot of Nigerians are accidental entrepreneurs. They are not empowered and knowledgeable entrepreneurs. And therefore, we do it the hard way. It takes longer because most people do not have what you call the foundational knowledge that allows them to understand the process involved in trying to do it. And our organizations, even including banks, haven't set up systems of enabling as well. Because except you fully comprehend and understand what the process of being an entrepreneur and executing is, you cannot create a system of support for that. So except the ministers in certain key positions are themselves people who have lived and understand the issues at stake, there will always be blind spots. Yeah. Not intentional, but just lack of knowledge, just lack of understanding, just matters that are left untouched, and problems that can be solved that are left unhandled. And at the end of the day, a nation wastes its opportunities. Because for every industry that we instigate, if we do not set a system to take all the value from it, we lose the inherent value that came with that particular industry. And the people are the ones that are sacrificed. Those opportunities that some people should have been taking, should have been able to take, those entrepreneurs that should have emerged, and those communities that should have benefited from it. Development of the right labor, skills transferred. What we need is like this round table, a holistic view of the situation. Not disjointed views, which is generally what we have. We need a holistic approach to the matters. We must know what the end goal is with clarity, and we must build systems that support it across every level. But you need informed, empowered, and equipped people to make it happen. And building more knowledgeable entrepreneurs across the country is key. Every graduate of a Nigerian school, tertiary or otherwise, should be trained fully in what it means to be an entrepreneur. Because you don't need a university degree to be successful as an entrepreneur. That is true. And there is no field that is excluded from entrepreneurship. That is true. A doctor who sets up an hospital thinks he's a doctor. He's a fake doctor. He's actually an entrepreneur. When he's consulting with a patient, he's a doctor. When he's discussing the affairs of the hospital, he's an entrepreneur. And one of the areas where people fail the most is actually private hospitals tend to fail a lot. Not because the doctors are not good, but they were never trained to manage a business. So the best hospitals in the world have business managers. The administrators of the business separate from the doctors. They're two different fields. But this is across every field. I'm a farmer, okay, but are you an entrepreneur? Have we prepared you to be able to manage the affairs of the farm business successfully? I'm a pharmacist. Setting up a pharmacy shop doesn't make you an entrepreneur. Knowing about the medicine, good for you, but running the business successfully requires a different type of knowledge. And until we actually deliberately pay more attention to building the human capital, we will lose every wave of disruption without taking the value that is inherent in it, which we need. We can't even afford not to. Because what then happens is a lot of foreign entities and individuals come in and take it because they know it. And when we're signing agreements, we don't consider those things because we don't even understand their value that we're giving, that we need to keep. We give contracts for billions and billions, and we don't tie in knowledge transfer to our own people and a minimum cap on foreign employees that can work in those organizations as opposed to our own people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me call the chairman again.
Thank you very much, madam. You know, I signaled to you. I knew that if you had more time, we would get far more from you. Because your session was structured for us to listen to you before you travel, we had to cut short our lunch to listen to you. Because of that, I would allow for question and comment on the floor. The way we are structured is that each speaker will speak for like 69 minutes. Am I correct? We have 3 hours. All the 5 speakers will speak for 2 hours, which gives us 24 minutes per person. And then question and answer, 10 minutes per person. 1 hour for all question and answer. So because she has to go, we have 10 minutes to ask our questions or to make comments. And then we'll have our lunch and come back for the session proper. Ordinarily, all the speakers will have finished their presentation before we have the interaction. But we cannot keep her waiting till everybody has spoken. So if you have a comment or question, but the rule is don't deliver another lecture. Otherwise, I will rule you out of order. So please just mention your name and just go straight to it. Yes. Don't tell us the story about Professor this, Professor that. Just mention your name.
Thank you very much. My name is Kunle Adeyemidoro, and thank you for your speech, ma'am. You spoke about entrepreneurship, which fundamentally is private sector driven. And Professor Itomi spoke about infrastructure development via private sector. How does the private sector, can I say, mobilize itself to be more effective and improve government's response? Because my perspective is that the private sector will be the solution to, I'm a healthcare professional. Private sector, in my view, is the future of healthcare. If you don't get private sector going, we don't have anything going. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Any other one? Okay. 2, 3, 4. That's it. 2, 3, 4.
Thank you very much, ma. I'm Kele Guri. If I can tap it from everything you've been saying, the major problem is environmental limitation and environmental influence on thinking and destruction. We have a box, and people keep saying about thinking outside the box. And I keep saying, who created the box? Is there a boss anywhere? And what should an entrepreneur do? Should he think outside the box or think without the box? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'll start with Mr. Box. And I don't know a box. I just know a country. And what I would encourage people always to do is, what do you want out of the system? What is your own goal? What do you want to achieve? What is standing in your way? How do you work with it or work around it? Because you see, the box will be different for different people. So when we get used to all these catchy words, and sometimes it actually limits people because they do not have the capacity to think outside of it. So it's how we build the minds of people to think constructively about deconstructing things and creating solutions. And I think, to be honest, there's a lot of value from our madness. That is the truth. Because it makes the average Nigerian entrepreneur super creative about finding alternate solutions to problems. Because it's the only way we survive. It's about finding, how do I go around this? But, see, there's a catch to it as well. How do you go around it? Subject to what values? Because you then need to determine what is important to you. What is your value system? Where are the lines you will not cross? What are the things that you must fight to maintain? And how do you do it? And the other part is, half the time, one of the things I learned in my journey is that most Nigerian entrepreneurs don't have information about things they have rights to, even in Nigeria. Half of the laws or regulations or policies that have been made are outside of view. So you need to make an effort to understand and to know what is first available to you by law and policy. Because you can't fight a battle without information. And I can give you a simple example. In 2004 or so, when I was going to set up our Software Chair Center, I've been in business for about 16, 17 years or so. But I didn't know that there was anything called bona fide manufacturer status. As a Nigerian entrepreneur who was in manufacturing. But all the Indians and the Lebanese factories, it's not just that they knew, it's that they were fully taking advantage of it. Because status. You're a registered Nigerian business, running business, manufacturing, paying bills, but there's somebody that needs to give me a status. And that empowered me to get lower duty on certain components for my manufacturing. I didn't know. Mike, sorry. I told you guys I'm restless. So when she asked me and I said, I don't know what that is, she said, okay. She called somebody from the fiscal policy department and said, you know how you guys write those letters? See, I didn't even know. See, you see, when you're looking for a box, you just get yourself in trouble. They have ways they write their letter. So she said, go and write the letter for her. So they did. And the application had to go to customs. And even though at customs, they had told me that certain things were not permitted, but it was impossible for us to run our production without those items. And when I went further, I am not ready to become a smuggler. You are going to have to solve this problem because this is what you've said as government. This is the solution we have provided. But between these two, you have a conflict. Because I need this raw material. Without it, I cannot deliver this. And then you're saying that we should go and operate. We can't because you haven't resolved your solutions, your information. When they sent me to customs for this bona fide manufacturers thing, there was one really smart person in the corner who knows everything. I sat with the guy in front of his computer. He went through. By the time we were done, he brought out all the solutions, including what they told me we couldn't bring. He had a solution for it in the system, in government system. Listed it all out as part of the bona fide manufacturer's application for me so that we could get that material and I could go ahead with my business without illegality. So it's really, where do you want to go? What do you want out of this system? Yes, it takes us longer than our peers in some other countries. It costs us so much more strain and stress. But you know, one of the decisions I made through that experience is this is my country too. I have a right in my country too. And that's when I made up my mind I will never be quiet. Because I realized when we complain at dinner tables in our houses and we don't speak up or do anything, some of the time, the guys who make an honest mistake in making a decision on our behalf just don't know. It's true. And if we don't engage in trying to inform them, we will never get the solution. That is the truth. So that's, your box is nothing. It's whatever you make it to be. Infrastructure and all of that. At the end of the day, it's cheaper when government provides infrastructure in some ways because then they're not under economic pressure to make returns. And there's some infrastructure that is so long-term in this climate where rates of facilities for most structures is too high for most projects. That the kind of projects you need for infrastructure. And if you take international money, which is usually the cheapest money to run projects like that, well, if you took it 2 months ago, at dollar of what rate, and you wake up this morning, and you already have a mismatch of funds. And so there's a challenge. In fact, in most of those cases, people actually use what they call sovereign guarantee. And sovereign guarantee means the debt is on the federal government. If you default, so people are happy to give you once they know that a country at the end of the day is going to have to meet its obligation. So at the end of the day, it's still government tied to it. Now, we're building higher capacity, a step at a time. But in total, it's about building the appetite for people to do it, creating an environment that entrepreneurs can trust, the continuity of policy that if one government loses today to tomorrow, and I'm not part of any government, but if I'm seated at the wrong side of the table just because they say I know somebody or somebody is my cousin and is in politics, which should not be my business, that my projects will not be put at risk, and that I can find the right kind of structures. Even banks have been burnt by a lot of those kind of structures. I'm sure you know that I will know. So at the end of the day, private sector has a huge role to play. But the environment has a lot of work to do. First, the guarantee and security of investment. The continuity of commitments. you start. 4 or 5 years, there's a change, and there's a change of government, and the new person thinks he has no business with whatever happened before. Many issues. But at the end of the day, government can never afford what we need for infrastructure. And there are different types of infrastructure. We need to break them up into more modular units for our own environment, because the huge scale one, we actually can't afford it.
Thank you very much. I think we cannot take any more questions for our session. I will invite Professor Shunubi to let us know how we manage lunch before we start our session. And I'm sure you welcome Mrs. Woshikab into the audience.
Thank you, sir. Please, round of applause for the chair. Dr. Aloy, member of the ULBS Advisory Board. Just before we go, we are really going for lunch. Let me thank Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika. Just like he had said, when I was communicating with her, Auntie, you must come, and he said, I will come, but okay, give me, in academia, we are very particular about structure so much. Okay, Auntie, please give me the topic you want to talk. She didn't reply. So, usually, I now know the reason anyway. She wants to speak from the mind, as we say, and not from the head. So thank you, man, and God bless you, man. And she asked again, secondly, she deserves another round of applause. She's supposed to actually travel out of the country today. Purposely and purposefully, she actually delayed the traveling. And she's not likely to go at the right time. She had promised. I'm sure everything will work together for good, man. Thank you, man. Wish you safety. Thank you, man. God bless. We go for lunch now, but before that, let me recognize Dr. Haino, the fintech expert, the president of African Fintech, Dr. Haino, my Egbon, and then, of course, Dr. Deria Woshika, chair of Access. Openly, I'm still waiting for Access. You understand? My committee members, you understand? We are waiting. Round of applause for Access Bank. Round of applause. Thank you. So we have just 30 minutes to go for lunch break. And once again, round of applause for the chair of the session, who is also coming back. Yeah. Thank you. Please, 30 minutes for lunch break, please. Just 30 minutes, please.
The chair of the session, please lead us for lunch. Kindly lead us. Make sure you